Hey kids, this is Ivan. I'm going to try to tackle the rather contentious subject of should the DM roll in the open and who should be rolling for what. Now, I've read a ton of threads on lots of RPG forums where people get very excited and heated in this kind of discussion, and I'm always a little bit flabbergasted over the adversarial relationships that people tend to have with some of their DMs and game masters. So I get a little perplexed and scratch my head and think, geez, if you don't trust this person that much, what are you doing in that game in the first place? Life is just way too short to play RPGs with people you don't like or don't trust, or to do anything with them. So my advice to you, if you find yourself in a situation like that, is to get out and find a better game. Okay? Now, onto the meat of the subject. As a DM, I'm going to tend to roll for your character for anything that you manifestly would not know if you succeeded or failed right off the bat. So in a D20 type game, that might be for something like stealth. You're not going to know right off the bat whether you really succeeded or failed. In a 1E type game, that would be a lot of the thief skills, so that would be things like picking pockets. You know if you got the item or not, but you're not quite sure if the guy saw you yet. Ditto, I use that roll for filching stuff out of a shop or something. So you know you got the shiny bracelet off the shelf, but you're not quite sure if the shop owner saw you yet. You'll find out relatively soon. For something like finding traps, that sort of thing, like if I roll really close for you but you just failed, I might say something like, you know what, you didn't find any traps but it doesn't look right, you want to try again. I'll be fair. Other things like move silently, hide in shadows, that's kind of stealth thing, so you're not going to know. If I roll really badly for you, I'm going to say, yeah, dude, you just tripped and you made a lot of noise and you're pretty sure the orcs just saw you. Something like that. Hearing noise, whether it's a thief skill or like just people listening at doors, I'm going to make that roll, because if you know you rolled lousy, you don't know whether there's something there or not. Your character shouldn't know that kind of information, and as a player, I don't want to know that kind of information either. On that line of thought, perception checks in D20. In my Pathfinder game that I play in, the DM will have us roll perception checks on D20, and like if I roll a 4. I know all of a sudden when he told us to roll a perception check, there's something there, and now I know that I missed it. So I'm knowing things that my character just shouldn't know, and now I'm just kind of looking around like, what's going on. So to me, that's not quite so realistic and kind of violates the feel of what something like that should be. And same thing for secret doors, like the first edition thing where you can check for secret doors and elves kind of spontaneously notice that sort of stuff. I'll roll for that, because once again, if you roll lousy, you're not sure if there's a secret door there or not, and you shouldn't know in the first place. In terms of like the armor class of a monster, I know a lot of people want to know what armor class they're rolling against. This doesn't really bother me very much as a player or as a DM. If you really want to know, sure, I'll tell you. But the thing is, you're going to find out. A bunch of people are going to roll, and pretty soon you're going to figure out, geez, a 15 doesn't hit, a 21 hits, oh, gee, a 17 doesn't hit, a 19 hits, oh, wow, his armor class is 19 or 1, depending on which game system you're going to use. For something like saving throws, in a D20 system, you're not necessarily going to know what the difficulty the DM is assigned to that save, but in something like first edition, you have your saves right in your character sheet. Sometimes I will tell you, yeah, you're saving versus poison at a +2, or a -4, because this is a really venomous monster. Other times, I'm just going to have you roll and say, well, what did you roll? What's your normal save? And I'll tell you if you made it or not. And it'll be, it depends on the situation. But, I'll let you know eventually what the deal is. But I don't think that's necessarily unfair, because how in the world are you going to know? In terms of rolling in the open, now, when I'm conducting a combat as a DM, I'm rolling for the monsters, I'm rolling for their to-hit rolls, I'm rolling for their damage, I'm rolling for their saving throws. If I have a screen up, I'm going to roll the stuff behind the screen. Not because I'm trying to be secretive, but because I don't want to have to lean in front of you and make a roll every single time. That's just kind of crazy. If I have my map up there or something I don't want you to see. And I'm not going to cheat, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to tell it like it is. And speaking of cheating, well, I just lied. Occasionally, here's my thing as a DM. I'm going to be mostly an impartial judge, but I'm slightly biased in favor of the party. I want to have a fun game. And every once in a while, I'm going to make this 1 in a million roll where all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I did something that's going to TPK the whole party. And I'm like, oh, man, And if you guys were playing really good, really intelligently, you weren't doing something dumb, and we're like, oh, well, that was a funny roll. Let me amend this. And so, yes, sue me. I cheat sometimes, and I give the characters a little bit of a perk or a benefit. So, yeah. And so I don't roll out in the open. In terms of what's cool to roll in the open, my Pathfinder DM and I both use critical hits. I use critical hits in my old school games. And so that's neat. So he hits us. He said it's a threat to a critical. I roll a 20. Then he kind of leans forward and he rolls the die. And it's this big moment where we're all looking, is it going to be a critical or not? And that's cool. So that's the kind of roll that if you roll out in the open, that's neat. Now, over on dragonsfoot.org, we've been having rather contentious discussion about assassins and assassination because some people think it should require a to-hit roll. I'm in the camp that it really shouldn't because it's a percentage chance. Now, but the idea came up with, well, this is kind of like a saving throw, if you think about it. If a 6th level assassin is going to try to assassinate your 4th level PC, he's got a 60% chance, which means you have a 40% chance of saving versus this assassination. So in a case like that, I have no problem with saying, here, take these percentile dice, roll a 61 or higher. That's your 40% chance. Or take this D20 and roll 13 or higher, and maybe you save versus that assassination. So that's what I do. I think people get a little bit too upset over this kind of stuff. And once again, if you're playing with somebody you don't trust, just tell them goodbye and see you later, buddy.